Welcome to another episode of EduExcel. I am your host Nirmala Thakur and I bring to you some ideas from Lala Lajpat Rai's Education for Nation Building. This topic today will discuss on his address to the youth. Lala Lajpat Rai, famously known as the Lion of Punjab, was a fearless patriot who believed that the energy, courage, and dedication of the youth were the greatest assets for building a strong and united nation. He called on young Indians to rise above personal interests and embrace a higher duty, serving the country with the selflessness and unwavering patriotism. Rai urged the youth to embody values of unity, moral courage, and devotion, reminding them that nation building is not just about economic progress, but a profound moral process rooted in the collective well being of all communities. Today, as we reflect on his powerful message, we invite listeners to draw inspiration from his life and teachings to actively participate in shaping the future of our nation with integrity and purpose. Youth, the greatest asset. Rajput Rai considered the young men as the nation's greatest asset, and the responsibility of raising the standard of living of the people lay on their shoulders. In their ability lay strength of the nation, and the culture that reflected in them was their national culture. The progress of the nation depended on their progress. If they trained themselves diligently for some job, they would surely be able to accomplish great tasks in the future. Though the seeds of patriotism he he ought had to be sown early in their hearts. Their education and knowledge required nation's foremost attention. However, if anything was wanting in their education, the matter should be discussed with their parents and their advice sought on what to do. Never should anything be done to weaken their morale. The only way he saw for them to forge ahead was by dint of intelligence and spirit of service to the nation. Sometimes they might commit mistakes and follies, but they should be given every support in time of their moral crisis. Never should it be thought that the young boys ever went astray without redemption. Characteristic of his profound confidence in the young man. He said, "Let the management of any school or college be given to me, and I assure that I will be able to keep all the students under discipline." Even at times, boys got out of control. It did not mean that the elders should sever their relations with them. As the saying went, a son might turn prodigal, a father never did. In his words, you may punish him, give him dressing down, and mete out to him whatever punishment you consider proper, but never give others the occasion to crush your children underfoot. This golden principle must inform every policy on national education and always be kept in mind while bringing forth a new tribe of young men dedicated to the service of the motherland. Call to youth. In his call to youth, call to youth. In his call to the youth, Lajpat Rai exhorted them to emulate Europeans and imbibe their best virtues and traits of character. They should always have high grit and single mindedness to think big and strive big. What he termed as the bane of the Indian society was that its young men were lacking in sign of ardor or zeal, which emanated from inner confidence, deep conviction, and a sense of dedication. Not that the Indians as a whole, he observed, led a humdrum life devoid of earnestness and were not prepared to face risks and undergo hardships for their convictions, but for a while this feeling seemed to have overtaken them to make them feel listless and flat. However, their history was full of numerous unique examples of persons prepared to even die for a cause. Public men who even renounced their families and gave up their material possessions for the sake of truth. And if their nation showed examples of great personages bristling with zeal and fervor of a high order, there were also examples galore of the people leading a pedestrian life devoid of any vestiges of the high qualities which their national heroes had in ample measure. He regretted that multitudes in India just vegetated and dragged without showing any sign of resistance or protest. There was no denying, he asserted, if they were to weigh the qualities of the elite of the European communities with those of the elite of the Indian community, the former would not stand in comparison with the latter. But the same could not be said about the ordinary Hindu vis-a-vis the ordinary European. The ordinary European stood head and shoulders above the ordinary Indian in earnestness. In this regard, truly speaking, even a small European community far excelled the 22 crores of India. He saw the lack of earnestness as the main cause of their backwardness. The amount of earnestness in an individual or a community, he affirmed, was an important criterion of judging the individual's or the community's character. It was also a measure of an individual's or a community's willpower, determination, and perseverance. There had been highly exalted persons of exemplary character among the Indians who were men of probity and who made great sacrifices for many righteous causes. At the same time, there were numerous examples of profoundly earnest men among Indians who spent their energies and utilized their genius most liberally to amass wealth and make personal gains. On the question of the ends and means, he felt convinced that the means mattered as much as the end. He had little respect for those who lost their sense of probity and did not flinch from resorting to unfair means to amass wealth or to get fame or high positions. Only those people were worthy of high esteem who were dead earnest to promote righteous causes, and by their earnestness they brought glory to themselves and their community. An individual's earnestness was the sheet anchor of a community's progress. It was a serious failing in the Indian community that an individual did not think that his personal gain was likely to be against the interest of the community as a whole. In short, he noted the lack of earnestness in their character as the single most difficult stumbling block in the path of uplifting of their community. In national education lay the key to the nation's greatness, since it was instrumental in imparting the virtues of earnestness, purity of means, probity, and high moral character, as well as sense of patriotism and nationalism among the children. Through national education, it was possible to recover their lost prestige and match the most advanced nations of the world. Reflecting on how they could remedy flaws in their national character, Lajpat Rai observed they should try to find out whether their country's climate had something to do with it, although there was a very remote possibility of this. They should find out whether their ancient Shastras had laid down certain precepts for mitigating this deficiency. If the answer to these was in the affirmative, these precepts should be made an essential part of their life. This would build their character as well as resuscitate their earnestness. The character he emphasized depended on potency and virality of their children, and this could be achieved by strict observance of the rules of brahmacharya or celibacy. The lack of good semen or vital fluid, as it was called, weakened the body and the mind, and its preservation made them energetic and refulgent. Along with it, one ought to lead a strenuous life. At the same time, during the period of their bachelorhood, they needed to cultivate good habits, avoid religious bigotry, hypocrisy, craving for rich and sumptuous food, which was not nutritious and what made a man indolent and lethargic. He reviewed the fact that the Hindu's attitude towards life was so otherworldly and his standard of living so austere that it militated against the idea of worldly progress. It was therefore incumbent to inculcate in them the idea of improving their standard of living and the urge to climb the ladder of progress. The formative stage of life, which was also a period of great struggle, he enjoined the youth should cultivate the virtues of dedication and self denial. Self denial did not mean foregoing even the bare necessities of life or to be subjected to rigid religious rituals which might become, as they grew up, a bane of their life. And the sense of dedication meant that one should make a firm resolve to accomplish a given task within a time schedule and work for it assiduously but not like an amateur automaton. That explained, he observed, why their ancestors had made the provision of placing a growing child under the tutelage of a guru for a certain period of time. The rules governing brahmacharya laid down in Hindu Shastra, he said, were not so harsh and exacting as every guru tailored the rules in accordance with the nature, temperament, ability, and requirement of a pupil placed under his charge. The pupils were treated as living beings having human characteristics and not as machines to do the assigned work, as was the case in Europe. But in their country, under conditions of alien rule, they were handicapped by an acute paucity of guides or instructors responsible enough and had the aptitude to groom the children properly during their formative years. It was not enough for an instructor to have a good academic knowledge, but he must have a high moral character and he should also be a cast in a noble mold. He must develop the capacity to have a keen insight into a child's mind and be able to devote ample time for his proper upbringing. For him, lucky were those who chanced upon a good guru to lead them through the trials and tribulations of life. But it was difficult to come across such a guru. So the Indian youth should act as their own guides through thick and thin and learn by experiences, find their own salvation through sweat of their brow and teachings and examples of great men. Pride laid emphasis on the necessity of cultivating inner and external purity in the youth. They should eat wholesome food for the sake of their health and have frugal habits conforming to simple living and high thinking. Those who lived extravagantly and beyond their means, he said, cut the very root of the sense of earnestness and thereby shut the door to progress and prosperity. It was futile speaking of extravagance and progress in the same breath. The youth must be taught, he enjoined, bragging about one's achievements and was not a sign of earnestness. There was a need to exercise restraint not only on their speeches and writings but also on their actions. Such restraint was conducive to earnestness. In this respect, he wanted them to take a cue from the Japanese, in whose case earnestness was the hallmark of their character. This trait came from through discipline, which they were required to cultivate from the very days of youth and even afterwards. For discipline was the secret of success and essential not only for them but also for the progress of the country. Education being the key and children being the most precious human resource, they should be given education in national ideals and be prompted to cultivate good habits. For the nation demanded it, and the future of their country lay on their shoulders, and character they had achieved played an important role in nation building. He wanted the strength of the youth to play their ordained role honorably and with dignity for the advancement of their country. As Lala Lajpat Rai famously exhorted, serving the country is the greatest religion, reminding us that patriotism is not mere sentiment but a sacred duty demanding selfless service, courage, and unity. Today, the National Education Policy 2020 carries forward this legacy by empowering our youth with quality, inclusive, and holistic education, preparing them not only with knowledge but also with the values and skills necessary for true nation building. Let us embrace Rai's timeless call to subordinating personal interests for the collective good and pledge to contribute actively to shaping an India that is equitable, innovative, and united. It is through the dedication of informed and responsible youth, nurtured by visionary policies like NEP 2020, that the dream of a strong and prosperous nation will be realized. The call to serve the country is a timeless summon that empowers each of us to make a difference. By stepping forward with passion and integrity, we contribute to the enduring strength and unity of our nations. Thank you for joining us on this episode as we explored Lala Lajpat Rai's enduring call to youth and its connection to today's vision for nation building through education. We hope this inspiring legacy encourages you to serve your country with dedication and purpose. Don't forget to subscribe for more conversations that spark change and celebrate the spirit of service. Until next time, keep striving, keep serving, and take care. Thank you.